Every once in a while, there's an opportunity to buy a great company at a great price. Although earlier this year you could have bought the company at 200 or so US dollar at the peaks, I think 227. Currently, we can get the company AMD at 138 or so US dollar. I think this is a really balanced price at the moment. I don't think that is necessarily taking into account a whole lot of growth. In fact, I think the price target from the analyst might be a little bit on the low side. 185 is 33 to 35% higher than the current stock price. But if you look at their actual expectations and their earnings per share expectations according to my models, I think we are looking at something like Q1 of next year being around $1, Q2 increasing it to, let's say, not 1.5, but maybe, I don't know, 1.2, 1.3 US dollar when we are looking at the GAAP earnings per share. Obviously, the non-GAAP for AMD would be a little bit higher, but then we could see that Q3 and Q4 is where the big magic happens due to the release of MI350X. And those 2 quarters, we could say maybe 1.6 and even more than 2 or just around 2 US dollar, which would put combined AMD earnings per share for 2025. I think if you add all of those out, you could get around 7 to 8 US dollar of earnings per share. And that's, in my opinion, yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at. At least if you get maybe not 7 to 8, maybe 5.5 to 7, I think that's more the correct number, I would say. But why would I say that it's expected to see this kind of growth? Well, you can see that OpenAI, which is a customer of AMD, a client of AMD's AI data center, they are seeing a surge in demand. So to the level that they now have a new tier of per monthly subscription at 200 US dollar with unlimited amount of AI questions that you can ask. And this is what we call inferencing, right? So OpenAI, they train these models, and then once they put it out there for the consumers to use, that is where the inferencing comes in. That is where, for example, you could go on ChatGPT and ask or give it a few kind of words, and then it will create a picture out of the words that you gave it. And I think there's other stuff to do. For example, you can do scripting, you can do a little bit of programming. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you could do. You can do text to speech, you can do speech to text. So it's a lot of potentials here. Obviously, not only with ChatGPT. We know that Microsoft has talked very well about AMD's MI300. That is the best price to performance AI processing. And we also know that Facebook is using MI300 to a very big extent. And I think going into next year, the one surprise for the market is that they are not seeing the advantages or the developments and evolution that AMD has been kind of doing over the past year. MI300 was strong in inferencing, but to be honest, it wasn't meant for completely for AI training. I think the workloads that it was aimed at was a little bit more varied, and whereas NVIDIA's H100, H200 are working specifically on data sets that are optimized for AI. So in a better word, I think you could think of MI300 as a kind of chef that is can produce a little bit of Spanish cuisine, a little bit of Italian, a little bit of Indian cuisine, but he is not a Michelin level of chef on each of those. Whereas NVIDIA's H100, H200, and so on, those are like specific, the best chef in Spanish cuisine or Italian cuisine, and that's the difference. But as AMD now obviously have been selling around 4 or 5 billion US dollar worth of MI300s, they see quite clear and strong traction out there. Obviously not to the extent of NVIDIA, but they are getting at least really nice sales from MI300 unless you never compare it to NVIDIA, of course. Looking at the evolution here, I think MI325X is only adding a little bit more, well, quite substantially more memory bandwidth, which will definitely help in inferencing. But the big thing here for me is what you see here on line 11 and 12, MI350X. That is, let's say, AMD's equivalent of a Spanish specialized Michelin star chef, right? This chip is specialized in AI training, but it's also very good in inferencing. Whereas MI300 and 325X, you could say that they were not so great at training. They're not bad or abyssal, but they're not the best at training. Whereas in inferencing, they are very, very good. Now MI350X is gonna be a really, really first test to NVIDIA, I would say. The first chip out there that is really gonna challenge NVIDIA on all levels. And I don't see any reason why AMD won't be able to sell this chip at least as a 2 times more than they did MI300, because their software stack will also be much more mature by next year. So they've got a lot of stuff going for them. We know, sure, Amazon is not, maybe so thrilled about AMD currently. We saw the kind of discussions that they had why the stock tanked a little bit the other day. But come on, it's not only Amazon. We have Meta, Facebook, we have Microsoft, we have even Elon Musk talking about AMD. So I think there's a lot of traction out there. And remember that no one is looking for a place where NVIDIA has complete, ironclad control of this market. So if you add all this together, maybe I was a little bit optimistic at beginning of the year, but it actually starts to add up. And remember that AMD is also gonna do same way as NVIDIA, that they kind of venture into networking as well. NVIDIA's GPU revenue is divided from compute, so the H100, H200, Blackwells and so on. And then they have the networking, so the communication between these chips. Remember, you don't only buy 1 or 2 or 8 chips. You buy like, I don't know, 16,000 of these chips if you're Microsoft or Meta, or even maybe more. And if you buy that many chips, you need to have a communication between them efficiently. That's where networking comes in, and you can see that they make like 4 or 5 billion per quarter only on networking. Obviously, AMD won't make anywhere near that, but it's going to be interesting to see how much AMD will be able to make by, let's say, second half of next year. They will ramp up in Q1 for networking as well. But yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting. And when you all of this up, I think it's not so unrealistic, the numbers that I have. I would love to see your point of view, but I mean, what do you guys say? You think that, I don't know, 8.3 billion is realistic for Q1, followed up by 9 billion in Q2, and then the big ramp up to 10 and 11, potentially 12 billion in Q3 and 4. And that's gonna, give us $1.5 to $2 earnings per share, and at the per quarter, remember. And at the current stock price, if you take, by the time we get into the summer, the 4 upcoming quarters from summer of 2025, which means until summer of 2026, AMD could well be on the way to make more than $10 in earnings per share, which means that you potentially buy in a company that is going to be selling at price to earnings ratio, a PE ratio of 10, maybe not 10, but maybe 15 at best, in late next year. I think this company, like, it's difficult to say, I don't know how realistic my models are. It's a little bit difficult, but I think it's realistic. It's possible that they make a 2x. So if they sell 5 billion in MI300s, I expect around 10 billion next year for sure. Maybe 12, 13 or 15 billion in 2026. And if that's the case, honestly, this is gonna be a walk in the park. This stock could be $260, $270 by this time next year. So again, this is not investment advice, but I think I just share my ideas and thoughts with you, and this could potentially be one of those cases. Remember, if you go back to, for example, Meta, right? If you look at Meta stock, I think there was a moment not too far ago. If you look at a 5-year chart for Meta stock, there you go. Yeah, it's not that far ago. It's November of 2022, so essentially 2 years ago. Meta was like everyone was freaking out. The stock was around $100, and now it's sitting at 600 for a company that is currently trading at around $1.5 trillion of market capitalization. That is, I think, I'm not expecting AMD to 6x from here, not at least in the up and coming 2 years. But all I'm saying that you could potentially be buying AMD at this same equivalent level, like a great company at a great price. Same with Metal. If you go 1 year before that, bottom here, you go 1 year to the end of 2021, you see the stock was at 300. Then it tanked to, around 100. For AMD, it's tanked from 220 to 138 right now. So sure, it could potentially go a little bit lower, maybe 110, maybe, but I don't expect like, I mean, if AMD goes to less than 100 or around 100 US dollar, honestly, I don't know. Again, this is not investment advice, but I would do a whole lot of stuff in order to grab as many shares as I possibly can. But even, at this price range, I think there's not extreme amount of risk. But if this goes down to less, let's say 125, yeah, that's gonna be really, really value for your money, in my opinion. But I'm gonna, as usual, follow AMD closely. Really looking forward to Q4 numbers, and especially the Q1 guidance. And let's see, if they are gonna say if how much of MI325X are we gonna see be selling, and are we gonna see a potential Q1 higher than Q4, which is not always the case. Look at, for example, Q4 of 2023 and Q1 of this year. You can see that there was a little bit lower, obviously, because the holiday season in Q4, Black Friday, and all those kind of stuff going on, right? That's what we see usually. And actually, you can see that in Q4 of 2022 compared to Q1 of 2023, the same kind of scenario. Q4 a little bit higher than Q1. But it could be the first time in 3 or 4 years where we can see that Q4 is actually smaller than Q1 of the up and following next year. And all hangs on data center currently, and I think I would say there's a good chance, because remember that even the gaming was abyssal in Q3 and even potentially Q4. So with AMD launching new gaming GPUs and their best selling gaming CPU selling like potentially never before, AMD's 9800X 3D is like probably one of the best value for your money in terms of gaming CPU in the history of gaming, I would say. So they're selling like to insane amounts of that chip. So I think this is gonna be the gaming side is gonna be nice. The client should be nice. It's just a question how much better will data center be, because in my modeling you can see the jump from Q3 to Q4 is 400 million, whereas Q4 to Q1 is around 900 million. And yeah, that's a tough ask. The biggest jump for sure, quarter to quarter, but I think that's possible. If not, maybe 4.7, 4.6. That would still be okay, because that would mean that we are getting at around 8 billion, which is still substantially higher than Q4. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for today. Please like, subscribe, and see you in the next one.